Hello YouTube! In this video we will take a close look at two different Glidecams in a shootout between the American-made Glidecam Industries HD1000 and the newer Chinese-made Yelangu S60t. We will discover which one is the most practical and whether or not either one of these are worth the money they cost. First, we will start off with some of the basic details. In terms of cost, the Yelangu is quite a bit cheaper than the Glidecam. The S60t is approximately $85 US, while the HD1000 is, or was, $500. Beginners would probably do well to start out with the S60t for monetary reasons, and from there can decide later on if a more expensive Glidecam would be in their best interest. For intermediate users, the low cost of the S60t is still quite tempting, while the performance of it would be adequate enough for some, as we shall soon see. Unfortunately, neither one of these devices appear to be easy to find on the used market in Canada and America, but for different reasons. The S60t is quite a bit newer than the HD1000 and has not had sufficient time to flood the market yet, and so far it doesn't seem to be popular anyway, so finding a used one is very difficult, at least in Canada on Craigslist and Kijiji. The HD1000 is also difficult to find used, even though it has been around for a while now, because most people that invest in a Glidecam Industries camera stabilizer tend to go for the HD2000 or the HD4000 models that are better suited for DSLR cameras with heavier lenses. I bought my HD1000 used, but not locally, and had to have someone ship it to me off Kijiji. The S60t is current on the market right now and comes in 4 different colors. But the HD1000 is, believe it or not, discontinued now in approximately February of 2017. On March 7th, 2017, Glidecam Industries representative Thomas Howie told me in an email that this product was a slow seller, 10 years old, and new models made it time for a change. It's sad to see it go, but one could tell even from the used market that the HD1000 was not a common item. But now that we are in the era of the electronic gimbals, this probably makes the viability of the HD1000, a mere mechanical stabilizer, even less viable on the market than it already was otherwise. I will comment more on this later. Now we will take a look at the versatility of these two devices, how easy or difficult they are to work with. The build quality of the HD1000 seems to be a bit better than the S60t, but not by much. The center pole of the S60t is made of carbon fiber, whereas that of the HD1000 is made of aluminum, but I am really unclear what significance that would make, especially over the long term. The bearing, yoke shaft, and handle of the gimbal assembly on the HD1000 is thicker and stronger than that of the S60t. Otherwise, with regards to build quality, the top and bottom sleds are not directly comparable as they do differ in design complexity, but I would say that the upper hand overall goes to the HD1000. These are the heights of the two different modes on each stabilizer, in both short and tall modes. The closer the bottom sled is to the center of gravity, the shorter the swing radius is. A longer swing radius increases the tendency toward instability, so the most practical mode in most cases would be the shortest mode. So the upper hand here goes to the HD1000 because it is more compact than the S60t in the short mode, resulting in a mechanical advantage. Setup time and balancing is faster on the HD1000 thanks to its fine-tuning adjustment knobs. The S60t is more rudimentary with basic locking knobs that work, but they are just not as precise, so you do have to spend more time fiddling with them. If you have to balance a camera or lens that is heavy enough, then the quick release plate would have to sit too far back in the release plate's adapter, covering the side-to-side locking knob, making it difficult to get a grip on it. And the release plate actually rubs on the knob, causing friction and even more difficulty in accessing and adjusting it. It is a real nuisance, trust me on that one. The wearing from several months of use on my S60T from this is clearly seen, but fortunately for the HD1000, a more efficient system is used that doesn't result in this kind of rubbing and inconvenience. Setup and balancing any Glidecam is not something I would call simple, as these things are finicky, but it is indeed more bearable with the HD1000. The position of the counterweights on both devices is adjustable. The HD1000 has a range of about 35mm for each side, while the S60T has about 48mm on one side, but only 14mm on the other side because the pull lock inhibits it. I don't think that this actually matters anyways, because the weights should always be spread the farthest apart for best stability performance possible. So the fact that the counterweights are adjustable on both devices is not something that I see as an advantage for either one. Who cares if they're adjustable? But if there is a good reason to slide them inward, I am unaware of it. Anyway, both of them get a point, but I was tempted not to. The counterweights of the S60T are more endearing because they are perfectly round, but even more so because they mount onto only one bolt for quick and easy fastening. The HD1000 weights are rather weird looking, and harder to reproduce in case you wanted to make your own. But also, they mount onto two bolts instead of just one, which doesn't seem as efficient or necessary. I wonder why Glidecam Industries, a premium manufacturer of mechanical stabilizers, opted to equip with such irregularly shaped counterweights that require two bolts instead of one. You know, even the Chinese knockoffs have a better implementation than that. Perhaps this is a bit nitpicky, but what can I say? It's my job. Well, here is an update. The iGlide 2 replaced the HD1000, and apparently Glidecam Industries did catch on. Nice. The minimum weight difference of the S60T and the HD1000 is 105 grams, with the latter being the heavier one. But when the stabilizers are loaded with all of their counterweights, the HD1000 is actually 10 grams lighter than the S60T. The heavier the stabilizer is, the stabler it flies, so when both of them are set up like that, they both weigh approximately the same, so they both get a point. Now, a point of interest since we're here is that the HD1000 has a higher rig weight to counterweight ratio than the S60T, which is the other way around. The S60T has a higher counterweight to rig weight ratio, and this is something that lends itself to the next detail that we will discuss: load capacity. The S60T has an impressive factory rated load capacity of 3,000 grams, whereas the HD1000 is rated for about only 1,600 grams, almost half that of the S60T. Admittedly, the HD2000 would have been a better matchup for the S60T in a load capacity test, as it is factory rated up to about 2,700 grams. Now, I don't know how these companies come up with these numbers, like what kind of drop time did they use, what was the distribution of the camera and lens's mass, was it close or far from the center of gravity? All these unknown variables, but I can say this though, that even though the HD1000 is rated for up to about 1,600 grams, assuming the tallest mode, which I don't use, I have been able to fly over 1,600 grams around in the shortest mode comfortably, and I do it all the time. I would comment on trying to exceed the S60T's 3,000 gram limit, but unfortunately I don't have enough weight to test it out. But even if I did, then the quick release plate might have to sit well over top of the locking knob. more than usual, as more weight typically pushes the plate this way. Still, the S60T does have the greatest loading capacity, so it gets the point. The S60T comes with a very convenient quick-release plate on the top sled. The HD1000 does not. Instead, it has a perforated mounting plate for the camera that covers a large surface area, though you can still use a quick-release plate and adapter if you want to, but you would have to buy your own separately. Now don't get me wrong, according to Glidecam Industries, this is a quick-release plate, but there is a conflict of jargon that is misleading, because according to many bloggers, it is better described as a slow-release plate. For most of us, what a quick-release plate is a plate like this that screws into a camera and then slides into and out of an adapter very quickly. That adapter can be attached onto all sorts of devices, such as this, which I personally refer to descriptively as a top sled camera plate. Because the S60T only has a quick release plate on the top sled, it is not designed for accessory compatibility. The mounting plate of the HD1000, however, is very practical for attaching accessories if one should desire to, like me. In this example, I am flying the HD1000 around with an LED light fastened to the mounting plate with a small bracket I made, and it works great. In this case, the same can be done on the S60T as well, but only to a limited extent, as you can see. The point here obviously goes to the HD1000 because it is much more conducive to attaching accessories. I don't really see one stabilizer as being necessarily more weather resistant than the other because they are the same type of product really, namely a mechanical stabilizer, as opposed to a motorized one with electronics. But due to the extra hardware and mechanisms on the HD1000, it has more on it that can be exposed to the elements than the more simplistic design of the Yelangu. Does this make the S60T more weather resistant than the HD1000? Possibly, but I don't know. Due to the simplicity of the S60T's top sled, it could conceivably last longer than the top sled assembly of the more mechanically complex HD1000. However, the bearing on the HD1000 is higher quality than that of the S60T, and therefore it could last longer. The actual durability of these two stabilizers, however, until the end of their years of service, is untestable for this video. Both of these Glidecams are relatively new in the sense of the date of manufacture, not design, so for the time being, forecasting probabilities from observations in the present to speculate over the long term will just have to do. I don't know which system is the most durable, but the viewer is welcome to confirm or deny the integrity of one over the other as they see reason to. The rubber feet on which both stabilizers sit upon are distributed differently, with the HD1000 having better footing than that of the S60T, making it noticeably stabler on a flat surface. Both of these stabilizers are somewhat the same size when assembled, with the S60T being a bit taller, but both come apart into individual components that can be placed in a small carrying case for transport. Technically, the S60T's center pole is longer and so takes up more space that way, but the HD1000's sleds are longer. Minor difference though. Notice that I do not have a case for the HD1000, but unless I am mistaken, I don't think that Glidecam Industries even makes one anyways. But aftermarket ones are available. I'm going to give the point to the S60T because at least it comes with a case. The height of the gimbal is not adjustable vertically along the center poles on either one of these devices, so their positions are fixed. While it is adjustable on some models, it is not normally the case. So I really don't think that the non-adjustability of the gimbal height of these two devices would bother most people, so neither one gets a point for this. Both stabilizers come equipped with adjustable yoke shafts for calibrating the balance of the shaft on the bearing housing, but I'm not sure that this is even worth mentioning because I suppose that this is just something that all mechanical stabilizers can do anyways, right? The Glidecam Industries Setup and Operations Guide says on page 6, "Do not adjust or tighten the factory settings on the gimbal, handle, and yoke. These parts should remain loose and move freely for proper operation." Oh, come on. It's not rocket science. These things come loose over time and need adjusting. Plus, the previous owner probably monkeyed around with it anyways, so you should know how to adjust these things. But one thing the S60T does not get a point for because of something that I am certain about is calibrating the bearing, because it is not accessible through the bearing housing from the outside. With the HD1000, however, is one of the most significant advantages it has over the S60T that really helps distinguish it as a professional glidecam. A calibratable bearing by 4 adjustable set screws on the inside of the bearing housing that align the bearing. This allows one to achieve perfect static and dynamic balance of the stabilizer no matter what orientation the handle is to the system. Here it is seen that the S60T is calibrated for use in my left hand, but in any other orientation it becomes unbalanced and therefore unusable. And as far as I know, there's nothing you can do about it. Watch how I am doing the same thing with the HD1000, and am able to maintain balance in any orientation. This is because I calibrated the bearing almost perfectly in the center of the pole. Because of this, the HD1000 can be operated ambidextrously, but the S60T works only in one hand. This is a clear win for the HD1000. The oil in the bearings of most, if not all, Chinese-made glidecams are probably too thick for frictionless movements. I do not confirm this from personal experience, but from Nitsan Simantov, who has extensive experience with all sorts of glidecams. Such is probably the case with the S60T. For example, whenever I pan to the side, drag on the bearing grips the pole and turns it a little bit in the same direction, kind of like a steering effect. The bearing on the HD1000 does not have this drag, as it seems to be oiled perfectly from the factory. Plus, I calibrated it. Bearings are easy enough to clean, oil, and maintain in general, if you can get to them. But I admit that if the bearing housing of the S60T is designed to come apart, I wouldn't know it. I've tried, but I'm not sure that Yelangu intended for it to be removable from the bearing. If it is, then okay, but otherwise I actually do not think it would be worth the effort anyways for a couple of reasons. Because for all the work it would take to do so and oil the bearing if you could, it isn't even a premium quality bearing anyways. Also, amateur or occasional videographers using the S60T, who are not doing commercial or other paid work like what I'm doing here, can still get relatively decent footage without the hassle of having to work on it from time to time. As a run and gun tool, it is so much easier that way. Of course, the point still goes to the HD1000 because it has a better bearing and doesn't necessarily need an oil change. The bottom sled length of the S60T is 183 mm, but that of the HD1000 is 340 mm, a significant amount more. And this is important for increasing stability while momentum is in effect. I think that there is some misunderstanding about this out there, but this is the same reason that I said earlier that the stabilizer performs best with the weights spread the farthest apart. This is because rotational inertia is a force that is weaker when the weights are closest to the telescoping pole, but strongest when furthest away. Having greater rotational inertia helps keep the rig pointed the same way, even under movement. The HD1000 has a total spread of 157 millimeters more than that of the S60T, giving the counterweights more spread that helps to resist the impulses of swinging to produce a smoother ride. I can say from all my experience that I did not feel more comfortable with one handle over the other. Both of them seem to work fine. Sometimes the foam on the handle can come off, of some models, but I haven't experienced that yet. So they both get a point. So if we take a look at the scores of all 19 details we looked at, the HD1000 scored the highest with 15 points, achieving a 79% success rate, but the S60T achieved only 66%. Indeed, the HD1000 is a better all-around design, making it more versatile than the S60T, particularly because of the adjustable gimbal bearing. Now let us move on to focus more on the actual performance of these Glidecams. Certainly the basic details and versatility of these two devices are important, but what would the footage actually look like with these two Glidecams? Are they comparable? Or is one noticeably better than the other? Well, it's time to take a look. The HD1000 will have all 8 counterweights on, and the S60T custom weighted to match the HD1000 in order to keep both bottom sleds weighted the same. Both will be set up in the short mode with a 3-second drop time, and as we shall soon see, wind was sometimes a factor outdoors. Also, I did only one take of each scene outdoors due to time restrictions. The man is walking in a straight line, and can you guess which Glidecam is on the bottom? It's the S60T. It is a tad stabler than the HD1000 here, but the wind speed happened to be blowing faster when I was using the HD1000. Listen to this. In this scene is a horizontal split of a 180-degree fly-around. This time I think that the footage from the HD1000 looks smoother. Well, perhaps what I could say is that I was smoother, as sometimes my footing loses proper rhythm. Here's a vertical split of the same scene. They are pretty similar, aren't they? Wind can really push a mechanical stabilizer out of balance, but fortunately this time the wind speed was equal on both devices. Overall, I'm going to call it a tie. In this scene I am running alongside the man and, I don't know, they are quite similar. Here is a vertical split again, but I'm still going to call it a tie however. I will say though, that the wind was blowing against the HD1000 again. Check this out. Now it is time to move indoors where there is no wind, where I like it. All setups the same again, and this time I did 4 takes of each scene and selected only the best one for showing. So these are the best takes I did from each device walking quickly. And I think that the HD1000 footage looks a bit better, but not by much though. Now I am running around the auditorium, and the HD1000 starts off pretty good, but then rolls a little bit on the first corner. Then gets somewhat bumpy going down the steps. After that, the rest looks quite even to me. Here it is again. Overall, I would call it a tie, but what do you think? Drop time is something that greatly affects the performance of a Glidecam. The more precise the calibration of the bearing and operation of the gimbal, the slower the drop time that can be achieved. For panning, dollying, or any other non-tilting movement, a drop time of 2 to 3 seconds is normally all that is needed. But tilting, however, is easier to do with a 4 to 6 second drop time. The maximum drop time I have been able to achieve with the S60T is 3.5 seconds, but with the HD1000 I can get 6 seconds, and it becomes very fluid to the touch when tilting. After reviewing this tilting down the stairs test with a 3-second drop time, I found both devices to be similar, but the HD1000 footage looked just a bit smoother to me. With a slower drop time, I am sure that the HD1000 would have done even better. Plus, the HD1000 was easier to operate because it is spatially more compact than the S60T, meaning the bottom sled is further away from my chest and my knees. Here is a quick full-screen view of the HD1000 for reference, and in a moment, the S60T scene. Before I move on to the conclusion, I will just show off a 2+ minute gallery of miscellaneous video footage that I have recorded with both the S60T and the HD1000 to help give a general sense of some real-world results I attained with these Glidecams over the last 9 months for the S60T and about 6 months with the HD1000. Up until I made this video, I really thought that the HD1000 performed much better than the S60T, but I was quite surprised to observe that the footage from both devices basically look almost the same. The only area where I found that the S60T was lacking performance-wise was at tilting, because of the lower quality gimbal design. But as far as determining a winner of the shootout goes, I have a quick answer and a long answer. The quick answer is that, as a Glidecam, the HD1000 is a better device than the S60T because it is much more versatile. Now, in the long answer I have is that, first of all, better is a subjective word that applies to each person differently. The S60T is something like 1/5 the cost of the HD1000, and it is not discontinued. And the performance, the way the footage actually looks when you view it on the computer, excluding tilting, is virtually the same. There are several different ways this can be interpreted though. If you are one of those people who would use whichever stabilizer for only several events or outings, only to end up tossing it in the closet for a few years anyways, which is common, then you probably don't need an expensive Glidecam for that. So in that case, cheaper is better. Go with the S60T. If you really want that professionally stabilized footage that only an electronic stabilizer can achieve, but don't have much money for one this year, but you think you will next year, but you do need something in the meantime, then save yourself a lot of money and get a cheapie. Go with the S60T. After a year, 8 months, whatever, it goes by quick. But in this kind of scenario, you would probably do best to just economize before spending a lot of money on one of these, or any type of motorized gimbal. If you are a die-hard advocate of the older tech mechanical stabilizers and just not willing to give in to the newer tech of the motorized devices, and you know you would actually get regular use out of it for many years to come, then you can't really put a price on a good Glidecam. But in most cases, a good Glidecam is cheaper than even a basic motorized gimbal anyways. If this is you, a diehard, and I think I might qualify, then the S60T is a compromise. You will outgrow it in a month. The footage off it looks fine, but the problem is that it is so cheaply made that it really is a bother to work with on a regular basis. You get what you pay for. Go with the HD1000. It is a quality Glidecam, particularly because of its versatility, and I recommend it highly, if you can find one. Between the two of these, I liked the HD1000 the best. Well, that concludes this shootout. The HD1000 is the winner. I have a Patreon page, but who cares though? It's been a slow year. So, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.